Last section of Chapter 11 is surface areas and volumes of spheres. So we've been working on three-dimensional shapes, so it's going to continue, and this will be our last section. So the first formula is the surface area of a sphere. So we're going to do 4 times pi times radius squared. So I'm going to have you do the got a question immediately because it should just be plugging stuff in. So in the got a question, it gave you the diameter of 14, so you should be using a radius of 7 and plugging into the in their spots. So I do 4 times pi times 7 squared. If I was going to leave my answer in terms of pi, I would have 196 pi. If I was going to round it, I would take 196 times it with pi, and I would get 615.8, or if you rounded to the nearest square inch, 616 inches squared. Okay, on the next question, it gives us a story problem where Earth's equator is about 24,902 miles long. That's actually a circumference number that they're giving to you. It's asking what's the approximate surface area of the Earth. Well, if they gave you circumference, I'm going to have to use circumference formula. So make sure you jot this down. Circumference equals 2 pi times radius. So if my circumference is that number, I would put it in for the C spot. Then I would need to solve for the radius. So I would divide both sides by 2 pi. Now, the first time I did this and typed it in my calculator, it gave me an answer that did not make sense. So then I realized, oh yeah, if you type this into your calculator, you must have parentheses around that denominator. Otherwise, it will divide by 2 and then come back and multiply by pi. So be very careful on how you type it in. So make sure you're doing 24,902 divided by parentheses 2 pi. So every time make sure you have parentheses around the 2 pi. So then I would get 3,900 something for my radius. So we have to solve for the radius before we can find the surface area. So that's why they gave us that circumference number. So now I can just plug that in into my surface area formula, square it, and multiply it with pi. Now if we're just rounding like we normally have been, this would be my actual answer, but the directions do say round to the nearest 1,000 square miles. So that means I would look at this to round up or down. So that's why I rounded to 197,389,000 miles squared. Okay, your turn in the got a question. So in the got a question, they gave you a circumference of 18. So you would plug that into your formula. Sorry, malfunction. You would plug that into your formula and have 18 equaling 2 pi r. Make sure when you typed it into your calculator, you had parentheses around that 2 pi. So your radius should be about 2.9 when you round it. So then you plug it into your surface area formula. You would get 105.7 inches squared if you are rounding like we have been. Directions say do round to the nearest 10 square inches, so that means I would want to round to here, so I look behind, so I would round to 110. Okay, last problem is finding the volume of a sphere, and that's very easy as well. It's just 4/3 times pi times radius cubed. So I have a got it question for you to try immediately. So in the got it question, gives you a diameter, so you would want to make sure that you split that in half for your radius. That's the only catcher there. So then I would put 30 in for the radius spot, and then I would just solve it out. It does say to the nearest cubic inch, so I would want to times all of those together, and I would get 113,097.3 if we were rounding like normal, but it does say nearest inch, so that means I'm rounding to a nearest whole number, so you could leave it as a whole number as well. Spheres are very easy along with cylinders because you only have a radius to deal with, so it shouldn't be too bad to find the surface area or the volume.